Good evening and welcome to the George Washington on the occasion of Powhatan School's 75th anniversary. I'm Jay Briar, the head of school, and it's my pleasure to acknowledge so many in our school community and those from the region who are here tonight so that we can pay tribute to education and educators by bringing together leaders of and from our community. Powhatan's motto, "We learn not for school but for life," means that we have to carefully balance a reverence for tradition with meeting the changing needs of young people. Dedicated to cultivating in our learners the knowledge, creativity, and character to thrive and contribute in an ever-changing world, earlier this year we adopted a new vision statement designed to build on our educational excellence, to equip our students with the skills and opportunities to be independent learners, to encourage our teachers to innovate collaboratively and creatively, and to embrace the outdoors and our surrounding communities as powerful contexts for learning, leadership, and service. We hope this evening will be another step in that ongoing journey. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge many of you in this room who have stewarded Powhatan over the years. In addition to current faculty, staff, and parents, we have current and former trustees and many of our associate trustees who have been connected to our school for decades. In particular, I'd like to recognize our 7th head of school and interim head just prior to my arrival, Billy Peebles and his wife Penny, who are with us tonight. Tonight has also been made possible by the tireless efforts of our 75th anniversary committee, most notably alumni parents and associate trustees Amy Sluss and Barbara Bissett. Additionally, Powhatan's Director of Development, Sydney Canese. Additionally, Associate Trustees, President Jean Gilpin and her husband Tom Gilpin, class of '67, who have been instrumental in planning this event and supporting our school for decades, along with many other members of the Gilpin family. We're also grateful to our sponsors for this evening, the Bank of Clark and the accounting firm of Yount Hyde Barber. Welcome to representatives from both organizations, as well as the Winchester and Clark County Educational Foundations and educators, teachers, and leaders from around the region who are here with us this evening. I'd also like to briefly acknowledge Carl Rush, formerly of Winchester Public Schools and currently the Chief Equity Officer for Loudoun County Government. He was originally scheduled to be a part of this panel, but a last-minute personal matter has kept him away. In a moment, I'll introduce our participants, but first, let me ask everyone to silence your mobile phones and unwrap your hard candies so that we'll all enjoy the upcoming conversation. Our panelists tonight represent different types of educators from different backgrounds, but all are connected to the Shenandoah Valley. First, a Powhatan graduate from the class of 1980 and a school leader for over 30 years in Warren and Clark counties. He's a published author and influencer in education theory and practice and has returned to Powhatan as our current head of upper school. Please welcome Evan Robb. Originally from Rochester, New York, our next speaker has been a teacher, coach, assistant principal, and principal both here in the United States and internationally. He's now superintendent of Winchester Public Schools, where he's been shepherding their Empower 2025 strategic plan. Please welcome Dr. Jason Van Hukelum. Arriving at Shenandoah University in 2001 as the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, she then became Vice President for Academic Affairs, then Senior Vice President. Now as President, she continues to teach as a member of the Political Science Department. Please welcome Dr. Tracy Fitzsimmons. A native of Clark County and an alum from the class of 1960, she's a distinguished scholar in the Civil War in the South who was the founding dean of the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study. In 2007, she was appointed the president of Harvard University, the first woman and the first Southerner to hold that position in the school's 350-year history. She currently serves as president emerita at Harvard and the Arthur Kingsley Porter University professor. and we were honored to welcome you back to Powhatan this afternoon and grateful for the time you spent with our students. Please welcome Dr. Drew Gilpin Faust. And our moderator tonight is someone who knows Dr. Faust well, also a Powhatan graduate from the class of 1964. He was a lifelong classroom teacher in both public and private schools, and Dr. Faust's brother. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Donald Gilpin.
Thank you all for being here, and it's a pleasure to welcome you. And it's an honor to be here with this distinguished group. I have lots of hard questions for them, and I'm eager to hear what they have to say about the future of education. I need to put the microphone up to my mouth, right? Okay. Last time I was here, I didn't have to speak. I danced. Surprised you with that one, I think. It was Miss Ewing's cotillion or recital. I think it was a while ago, 1963 maybe, but that was the last time I was here. I'm not going to dance tonight, you'll be happy to know. I was thinking of asking the panelists if they would dance. I probably won't do that either, but let's get to the questions about the future of education. My first question is, what does education innovation mean for our public and private K-16 institutions? And start with Evan on that one. I don't have any, no easy questions. Sorry.
Well, let me just kind of open up the conversation and first of all say, sometimes in education, when we hear the word innovation, we apply it completely to technology. And you hear that a lot today in education. But I want to share some thoughts about innovation of curriculum, innovation of pedagogy, innovation of space, and how do we use the spaces that we have for learning within our schools. At its core definition, innovation is doing something different and having a new novel result from it. What's exciting about innovation is that I think it's a driver for moving away from some of the more traditional models in education that probably most of us in this room have had in common, and opening up conversations and opening up thinking for new and different ways in order to reach the diverse needs of our learners today. So, pass it on.
Jason?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. So I'll build on that a little bit. I think innovation many times comes from a need to solve a problem, right, in the, quote, real world. And so I'd like to ask the question, what are the problems that education has right now? And there certainly are many, but two that I would put forward is one, we're producing students right now, and we have for about 25 to 50, well, probably 25 to 30 years, that are really, really good at taking multiple choice tests, right? And so they're really, really good, and so they become to believe that every problem has one answer, and there's only 4 possibilities that are even possible, okay? And I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but truly, I do believe that and that's pretty much the span of my career, the last 27 years. And so what I've seen over that 27 years is a hyper-focus, almost an obsession with accountability. Let's hold those schools accountable, and I'm talking in the public space, obviously. I had the wonderful privilege of being an international school director in La Paz, Bolivia for 3 years. And I came out of public ed. I was a principal in public education. My wife and I moved to Bolivia, and all the rules were gone. I mean, I just had to educate kids, and no one was telling me what to do. And I can't tell you the freedom I had. And guess what? My teachers still taught kids to read. They still taught math, but there was a lot more flexibility. And so that would be one thing I would argue is something that may need to change, and we need to be more innovative in our approach. And it might start with rethinking what we measure. So if we're only going to measure standardized testing, and that's the only thing we care about, front page of the newspaper this morning, right? maybe we need to expand the scorecard and add some other metrics to what we care about and what we believe are important, and then measure those things and hold schools accountable for that. I'm not saying throw away the accountability for reading. I need to teach kids how to read, right? But you also want us to create kids that are creative, that can think critically, that can write. I see Mr. McKernan in the audience. That's what he's doing right now with my daughter. Thank you very much. Teaching her how to write. And so expand the scorecard would be, doesn't sound innovative, but that would be innovative to me. So stop there.
Thinking about innovation in education, the first thing we need to think about is what do we do really well? In our zeal to innovate, we often throw out what doesn't need to be fixed, what isn't bad. And so you think at Powhatan, the extraordinary things that Powhatan does, think about the extraordinary things that Winchester Public Schools do. Let's protect what that is and not waste our energy on trying to throw innovation at those things. Let's take our innovative energies and put it at the areas where we really need to fix. So your example was scorecard. Another example might be as we think about diversity. We often think about how to reslice the pie. Is there a way we can increase the pie? So as we're trying to diversify the voices, the peoples, that we have more space, more room, the pie's bigger. So we're not getting rid of those that were there, but we're finding ways to bring more in. Also, in terms of innovation, when I think of K-16 or K-20, so including higher education, undergrad and graduate, and I think about the Northern Valley, we could probably work on innovating even more together. We could identify what the problems are. We don't have enough teachers anywhere at any level. We don't have enough nurses, enough physicians. If you try to get your pet into a veterinarian, you know we don't have enough of them. We don't have enough folks who want to work in manufacturing. We don't have to go outside to solve those problems. We could probably solve those problems here. And we could have K through 16 or 20 working together. And we've been doing that. But do that even more deliberately, bringing in the businesses, bringing in the hospitals, and finding a way that where can we grow our own all the way through getting them interested in elementary school and middle school, in high school, and then keeping them here, whether it be at Lord Fairfax Community College or Shenandoah, or maybe there's an online option somewhere, so that they can grow through here and stay here and contribute to the communities, and we can solve our problems, our shortage areas here together.
Thanks. I'm so interested in hearing the ideas from the other panelists, and I was particularly struck by Jason's comments, which I'd like to build on a little bit, partly because of what I saw and thought about as a result of visiting Powhatan today. And Jason, I'd add to your question, what are we going to be accountable for, is what do we want students to learn? And I've been struck at how that has changed at Harvard University, at least over the last decade or two, and how I think I saw that reflected in some ways in the ways elementary school teachers are approaching what students, and elementary schools are approaching what students need to learn. And I had a chat in a classroom as Mr. Briar was showing me around today with a teacher and with other teachers about how elementary schools often can educate higher grades about some of the innovative ways to think about learning. And I'll just give a specific example. And this is, what is it we want people to know? Not just what goes on in their little heads. We increasingly focus on maker spaces, arts participation, on creativity, as you said, on educating more of a person than used to be the job of education when I was an undergraduate, or really even when I became an administrator at Harvard a couple of decades ago, bringing the arts into the center of the curriculum, bringing maker spaces and engineering principles together with those arts principles to have people do hands-on kinds of activities, and making that an important part of what we want our students to be adept at and to trust themselves at. Not just what they can do on a standardized test where you're asked an abstract answer, but also what can you build, what can you make, what can you invent, what can you contribute in those ways. And as we were having this exchange today, another subject came up, which I think is also part of what we want to be an outcome of our curriculum. And that is, we want healthy human beings. And in universities right now, there is a mental health crisis, an incredible set of stresses that students are feeling and feeling overwhelmed by. Partly it's the aftermath of the pandemic, but this existed before the pandemic as well. It's just intensified. So how do we innovate in education to make sure that we are creating human beings who are creative, who are able to build and make, but also who believe in themselves and feel confident about who they are in the world? And how do we have an innovative curriculum that answers all those needs, not the just narrow subject matter, what is the date in history, or I'm obviously caricaturing what is done in substance areas, but in traditional substantive areas. But I think the notion of what education can aspire to has broadened significantly, and that's a kind of innovation in how we think about it and how I hope we'll think about it in the future. I'm the same age as Powhatan, so I'm not going to be doing that a whole lot.
Thank you. I thought I'd take an additional question of innovation. An additional, thank you. She can't get over telling me what to do. This has been going on for 70-some years now. On the question of innovation, a report from the Paris climate change officials today, not surprisingly, progress since 8 years ago, but limited progress with, let's see, what was the statement? Not enough progress to avoid the calamity of many of the effects we've been seeing over recent years. So I think this is also in the realm of innovation needed for education. How can schools and colleges most effectively address local and global concerns about climate change? Who would like to start on that one? Jason, thank you.
The first thing, one thing I want to say about innovation too, and I think this applies to everything that everyone on the panel said, and it certainly applies to things that we're talking about this evening, which is what are the conditions that need to happen within the organization, the school division, or the school to allow innovation to occur. Because there can be things that the leadership in buildings do that will either elevate that or can quickly extinguish that. And that's certainly probably something that thematically we'll go through as we have conversations about where education is and the conditions that need to be in place for it to be different. Now, in terms of climate change, I think that our kids today are inundated with a lot of information, and a lot of the information is not factually correct, but at times it appears factually correct. And one of the things that I think is important for educators is to help our children understand what is real, what is propaganda, what is science. And I'm a very strong believer that certainly when it comes to climate change, that we need to raise awareness, we need to teach our children to understand the effects of climate on our environment, the responsibility of being good global citizens and taking care of the environment, and also being able to discern information, whether it is real and factual or possibly packaged very nicely, but not.
Thank you. I guess we don't need everybody commenting on everything, but who else would like to weigh in on the issue of climate change in education?
And I don't know that to the extent that this is true of your students or students in the public schools of Winchester, but the students I've encountered in the last 15 years are insistent about the importance of this. And they feel it's their generation's burden that they have inherited from us, baby boomers in particular, and they want to know what to do about it and how to address it. And so there's a sense of urgency that I believe is quite widespread among young people, and that we should listen to, because our credibility in some ways depends on our ability to respond to that and respond to something they want to know about, and they want to be equipped to evaluate data. They want to be equipped to understand what's happening as they see the effects of climate change are happening around them. So I do think it's kind of a test of the education system to say, can you do this? Can you give us what we need in the world? And one of the things we need in the world is this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe I would broaden the conversation a little bit, because if you're not aware, public schools tend to be in the newspaper quite a bit lately, and are a little bit of a lightning rod on political and social political issues, right? And certainly this would be considered one of those issues, among a number of other things. And so because I serve an elected board, right, and we serve the public, I can say and I'll just kind of speak from the last 30 minutes of when I found out this question was going to be raised, my mind immediately went to, okay, how do I navigate this politically, right? I mean, if I take a stand on one side or the other, I'm going to offend somebody, maybe even in this room. It gets out, Jason's, this way or that way. And so to me, it just highlights that on this particular issue, it immediately goes to a political dynamic, and it maybe shouldn't go to a political dynamic. And so that's the challenge, I think, that public schools face. I'll give you just one small example. There are a number of things we can do in public schools and in schools in general regarding a number of things, from electric bus fleets to solar panels on the roof to geothermal, right? But when we get to those decision points, many times when the board is asked to make those decisions, they become immediately political, and they are also expensive, right? So there's also this fiduciary responsibility. So maybe I'm not answering your question. Maybe I'm just highlighting the challenges that we face when kind of tackling that. So that's just from personal experience.
Building on the political piece of it, I think we could help by relieving our young people of the sense that this is a political issue. For our generations, this is a political issue. Does climate change exist or doesn't it? For their generation, they know it exists. It is not a partisan issue. For them, it is just a question of survival. You all have messed up the planet. How can we fix it? How can we convince you to move more quickly as adults? And so they are watching what we do, whether they're third graders or whether they're college students. And it's all the basic things that we could just role model. I remember Mr. Legg used to ride his bicycle all the time. Like, students noticed that. They talked about it. Do we shut off the light when we leave the room? This weekend we're supposed to have a big pool party at the university. We have water restrictions because of climate change challenges. We can't refill the pool at the university. I'm so sorry, you can't have fun, but you know what the right thing is to do. We're not going to refill the pool, right? All of those basic things. How can we continue to be role models? But how can we just take it out of a partisan realm and talk about the issue? That would be the greatest gift we can give them, and then follow them. They frankly have better ideas. Young people, whether they're 8th graders or college freshmen, they have better or at least as good ideas as we all do.
The next question is about college. There's been a lot of criticism recently about the value of college, with many questioning whether a college education is important or a good investment. How should we think about college and its value for individuals and for our society?
I think I'm supposed to start. There's an article that I read just this week that reported on survey data about what Americans think about college education. And over the past decade or so, the number of Americans saying that a college education is extremely important and I really want my children to have one has dropped by about half. And it's only around half of Americans who are saying that right now. I find this upsetting in several ways. One is, it is still the case that the premium in terms of lifelong income for going to college is extreme. It's like 60% greater over a lifetime, so financially it makes sense. Things like health, civic participation, they all are markedly improved with a college degree. It also is a factor in, one of the, I guess, criticisms is there's so much debt, so that in fact, this article points out that your wealth, your income increases, but your wealth is challenged if you're taking on so much debt. Well, I would like to just argue back a little bit with that perception or elaborate on it, because one of the reasons that wealth is diminished and debt is so high is because our support for public higher education has dropped so dramatically since the financial aid crisis in 2008. And much more of the responsibility for paying for college has been shifted from the support of a state like California for its higher education institutions to the individual through tuition. College is seen not as a public good, not as the virtue of having an educated populace, which the founding fathers held forth on endlessly. You cannot have a democracy or a republic without an educated citizenry. It is a public good. But if we tell people they have to pay for it entirely themselves, then we get these debt levels that make the college question seem one that is not worth endeavoring to achieve. I also worry that when we criticize college or say college isn't worth it, we're selling people a bill of goods. We're saying certain people don't need to go, don't bother, we'll exclude you, and not providing the engine of upward mobility that is enhanced, offered, fueled by higher education. And so I think this is a very dangerous circle that we've gotten in of dumping on higher education when we ought to be supporting it as, first of all, one of the great exports, one of the great achievements of the United States. We have the best higher education system in the world. People admire us for it all over the world. Are we just going to destroy it? Are we going to refuse to support it? Are we going to say it's not worth anything to us and therefore it shouldn't be worth anything to you? So I think this is extremely worrisome. I think it's misleading. I think it betrays certain groups in society who will take this advice to their detriment, and it will undermine the strength of our country and undermine opportunities for individuals. So you can see I don't feel strongly about this at all.
Yes, all of that. All of that, absolutely. And so I'll just add on to that. I find it disturbing that so many people in the Commonwealth and in our country who are saying workforce development, we don't need to encourage students to go to college. We can encourage them to go into the workforce. That is an important message of equity. Like, both are valuable. Human beings, whether they choose one option or the other, have equal value as human beings. But we know that democracy needs an educated populace. And what disturbs me is that so many of those that are saying, you don't need to send your kids to college, it's so expensive, just send them into the workforce. They went to college. They're sending their kids to go to college. They're setting up the fund for their grandkids to go to college. If you went to college and your kids and your grandkids, you expect them to go to college, please don't be the person at the dinner table or the cocktail party saying, yeah, I don't know why people spend so much money at college. It's probably not worth it. They should go into the workforce. Workforce is valuable. Everybody, though, should have an option to choose what they want to do. The other piece is that the high debt numbers that we all hear, about $100,000, that's largely graduate school. Students going to law school, students going to medical school. So across the country, it's about $29,000 to $30,000, the average debt that a student bears across all public and private four-year institutions when they graduate. And when you put that up against the fact that they're likely to earn $600,000 to $900,000 more over the course of their lifetime, that's a good bet. That's a good investment for them.
Yeah, and I would say, to me, two things. One is it's not an either-or conversation, right? We should be talking about the workforce with students, all students, right? But it is an equity issue, because if we double down and continue a message of you don't need to go to college, to your point, who are we really talking to? Let's be honest, okay? You're talking to students who don't have the means, right? You're talking to students, many of our students of color, our Hispanic students, our African American students, our multiracial students. And so by action, it will bifurcate the conversation and the pathways for students. At the same time, and we've made a significant investment in career technical education in Winchester. If you're from this area, we've remodeled the John Kerr Elementary School. It's called the Innovation Center, and it houses our career technical education. But we also, and our board was very strong on this, put a stake in the ground and said, we don't want a high school where the haves go left and the have-nots go right, okay? AP classes are down that hall, and CTE classes are down that hall. Almost every kid at John Hanley High School goes to the Innovation Center and participates in CTE classes. Why? Because and I say this all the time, sorry, Harvard gets used all the time. It's okay for you to take welding and end up going to Harvard, right? That's a valuable skill. Yeah, right. I mean, how cool is that? We also talk about social cohesion. And so if our kids are working together in the welding lab, and the kid that's going to Shenandoah University is standing next to the kid that's going to the workforce, but they're working together, that's a good thing for our community. And so they're working together at 16. Hopefully they'll be working together when they're 30, right? So that's my 2 cents.
I want to add one small point, just really profound what you all said, and I don't have anything specific to really embellish on that, but I can share a personal story. When I was a junior in high school, my guidance counselor told me that I shouldn't go to college, that I wasn't college material. And fortunately, it's true, but fortunately for me, I went home and I told that to my mom and dad, and they were quick to tell me not to believe that. And that they saw a pathway for me. And a lot of this, in my mind, fits into something that I absolutely believe our panelists certainly believe in. And it comes to me down to the work of John Hattie, who did a really big meta-analysis of what impacts learning within organizations, within schools. The number one thing is collective efficacy, which is the belief of a group of educators in the potential of children that are in front of them, the belief that they, through means of working together, professional development, working long, tireless hours, can have a positive impact for the children in front of them. And so the belief is very powerful, and it's and as you pointed out, it's incredibly detrimental if people go into our profession seeing a have and a have not. And that's something that I've experienced. I have certainly seen that at times over my career. But I'm very hopeful as we move into the future that we'll move far and far away from that. And as educators, instead of determining what our children in front of us will be, create opportunities so they can be whatever they want to be. Thank you.
Jason, I just thought occurred to me, have you seen evidence of this at Hanley, where it's students are applying to colleges in smaller numbers, or they're having reservations about having to be encouraged to apply to college?
So our numbers are pretty steady. About 40% of our students go on to a four-year institution. 60% either go on to community college, military, or the workforce. That's been pretty steady in my tenure. I think we do a good job of promoting college university, and every year we promote where they go and are very proud of where they go. I will say John Hanley gets more scholarship money than any other local high school in the area, and we're very proud of that. And so, we absolutely promote that.
But you haven't seen a drop off?
I don't think so. I mean, I haven't seen any data to suggest that. Yeah.
That in itself is remarkable. Reflection of what you're doing, because the number of students who are graduating who are coming from first-generation families has gone up in the same time, right? And so those families are less likely to send their kids to college. The fact that you haven't seen the numbers go down really is a testament to something you're doing right.
Thank you. I mean, I think it is important for this community to, and you may know this, but a lot of places where I get to speak, they're shocked when I say what I'm about to say. Last year, 3 out of every 4 kids came from a home that qualified for free lunch. 77%. Think about that. That wasn't true 7 years ago when I moved here. It was 61%. When Evan Robb went to school, it was probably way less than that, right? So we're considered a very at-risk school division in the state of Virginia. 30%, so 1 out of 3 children in Winchester Public Schools speaks English as a second language. Most of them are Hispanic, but we are increasingly more and more diverse. We welcomed 30 Afghan refugees this year. And so we're very diverse, and to your point, a lot of our kids over time are not your typical college-going family where it's been drilled into their head by a mom and dad that said, you're going to college come hell or high water. Yeah.
Thank you. Moving into the classroom for the next question, how can project-based learning improve on the traditional classroom model? Evan, could you start on this one?
So the traditional model that I experienced, and I would guess many of us experience in the room, is something called direct instruction, where the teacher is in front of the room, often lecturing. You would take notes, you would take a quiz, sometimes every Friday, and then everyone in the class would have a range of grades, from A's to F's, and on Monday, it would simply move forward, and kids either got it or didn't get it. Now, direct instruction is not a bad word in education, and if you dig back into the research of John Hattie, there's certainly strong evidence that it absolutely does produce positive learning results. I think part of the challenge is that it's not the only way to achieve learning results in the classroom. So project-based learning is merging the curriculum to either bring in different disciplines or to bring in other skills other than the memorization that Dr. Faust spoke about when you spoke about history. I'm giving kids opportunities to expand creativity, to work on communication skills, inquiry learning, and to dive deeper into their learning and perhaps be assessed differently. It is certainly innovative, and I think it's something that we're seeing more of within the field of education, but I wouldn't just pocket it into project-based learning as the be-all, end-all. What I would say, it's one different pedagogical approach to diversify learning within your classroom, to differentiate learning, and to hopefully help more kids become successful. But what I would also add, when it comes to anything different than traditional models of education, is what is occurring within the building that is giving people permission to try this, and giving people permission to try something even if they may not initially be successful at it. Because again, I'm going to come back to my seat here as the building level administrator, and the building level administrator can certainly create conditions, professional development, support, positive affirmations to bring about instructional change within a classroom, but they can also do the exact opposite by making people feel that if they're not successful, it's a bad thing, and that can just extinguish it right away. So yes, project-based learning can make a difference, direct instruction can make a difference, but my approach is looking at lots of different modalities of instructional strategies to reach the needs of all children.
Thank you, thank you. And anybody else like to weigh in on this, or maybe not? Okay, thank you. As you observe your students, what is it that impresses you most, or that you most often wish they had learned or experienced in their earlier education? Okay, we're going to have to do eeny, meeny, miny. You can't all start on this now, come on.
They're incredible.
Thank you, Jason.
And I don't think I need to say much more than that. But they are genuine. They're smarter than you think, and they're probably smarter than some of us in the room. And they're willing to take risks, and they're willing to, they still believe, maybe I did too at this age, but I've lost it because I'm old, but they still believe they can really make an impact and change the world. And they care about that. So I'll start with that. There's 100 other things, but I'll start with they care.
I affirm that and say that's been my experience. I've been back in the classroom now since I stepped down as president in 2018, and I've been struck, and it partly is what informed my comment about climate change, how much they care about the world and how seriously they take the world around them, and how they feel compelled to engage with what they see as the world's pressing problems. And there's something so uplifting about that, and it's been so uplifting for me these past years as the world is, in one crisis after another, and I just feel it is in really good hands with these students, and that they're going to do something right for the world, and it sounds very similar to what you were just saying.
Can I make a connection point to Evan? I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's why project-based learning is so important, because sometimes we have to get out of the way. And the typical instruction, right, is the teacher talking forever while you sit and listen, kind of like what we're doing here. But we need to give them space to dig and to experiment and create their own solutions to our problem.
Thank you.
I would just add one thing that I would add. It's one of the things, a lot of things that impress me about children, and one thing that does is how fearless they are. I think it's really impressive as, my job being able to work with kids over many, many years. The fearlessness and the daring that kids bring into schools is beautiful, but we all know that at times if you walk into a first or second grade classroom and you ask kids, what do you want to be? And they're going to say an astronaut, a doctor, the president. And sometimes it's a little different when kids are in 11th and 12th grade. And sometimes we need to take a look, as professionals, what are we doing to help kids retain the fearlessness that they almost unilaterally have when they're very young? And how can we, elevate that and celebrate that as they move through school? Because sometimes purposely and sometimes it's completely inadvertently, things can be done to extinguish that spark. And we certainly don't want to do that.
I think these young people have so much more of a burden on their shoulders than we can even imagine. And the fact that they are coping to the extent they are is really quite remarkable. Right? So we've given them a host of problems in the world, and I'm not talking about sex and drugs. I'm talking about the fear of what's going to happen with climate change and financial challenges and the ability to see the haves and have-nots much more quickly, to see what's happening around the world, to fear what's happening with China or Russia right now or North Korea, because they get all that information so much more. So I don't think the answer is to take devices away. Part of the challenge is we're awfully busy ourselves as adults. And so our inability to engage with the young people more regularly, to have conversations with them, is really hindering some of that. And so they're trying to work through these issues when they're young on their own because we're not available. A lot of us are two-income families, right? Or we're on our own devices because we have to check our Facebook and we have to put together the next, e-invite, whatever it is. But they really just need us to engage, and I think that's really a challenge. That wasn't really the question you asked, but it's connected to it. They're remarkable. They really are. They do care so much more. And the devices aren't all bad. The devices are teaching them to think strategically. They're helping them to look for the right answer, because it's at their fingertips, so why don't they just stop and look, and then it adds to the conversation. So those are really healthy ways to use the devices. I do think what I wish that young people had, K-12, K-16, is a bit more resilience, right? A bit more ability and willingness, and that's on all of us as adults, to self-advocate, right? They don't need to ask for X, Y, and Z because their parent might step in to do it for them, or their grandparent, or whoever it is. But we need to say, no, I can't make that phone call for you. You can do that. I know you're unhappy, you're waiting in line. It sounds like it's only 5 or 10 minutes. Go ahead. And then tell them what you need or what's wrong. I mean, we just need to help them learn to self-advocate, and we need to help them learn to problem solve. Because as adults, we just want to jump in and solve it for them. But they need to learn to do that, and we need to help model that for them. And so perhaps it's, like, I know you're not happy with her, but why don't you tell her yourself? I can create some safe space so you can do that, and y'all can talk it out. Because what we tend to do is, we'll just take care of this right now for them. We'll separate them. We'll put them in different classes, or this one will go over there. But that's not how life works for the most part. You have to learn to get along with your coworkers and your neighbors, even if they're not your favorite folks, right? Even if you disagree with them or they say something that's offensive to you. But we have to help teach them to do that. So that's, I think, where they're floundering, that a bit of resilience and self-advocacy and an ability to work through problems as opposed to ask somebody else to just bring down the axe on it.
Okay, I did say I wasn't going to ask you all to dance, but I will ask you to participate in the lightning round. We'll make it on a voluntary basis, but if you could limit your answers to maybe just one specific example or whatever you can say in let's say 2 or 3 sentences for these. And I will ask for volunteers. I won't pin anybody down. First, lightning round. I always wanted to be a game show host. It didn't work out. First lightning round question. How can we more effectively promote equity in education, especially when resources are not equitably distributed? Who's the first lightning round? We can.
I'll just read this article.
Thank you.
Thank you. Funding certainly, is an issue, and funding, at times one zip code can determine the level of funding that a public school receives.
One more sentence.
One more. Read Jonathan Kozol's book, Savage Inequalities. It goes to the heart of some of the real challenges of equity and funding in education.
Very good. Any more lightning round participants here?
I would say very pithily, if that's a word, monitor and act. You got to monitor. You got to have data sets that you care about that would give you the information of whether things are equitable or not, aka representation or student outcomes. And then talk about it and act.
The
Thank you.
book Cast is really quite extraordinary. I would, again, go back to make the pie bigger when we can afford to do so. Bring in more voices and find the voices you don't want to hear.
Thank you. Okay. Next lightning round question. What are the major issues facing classroom teachers as they seek to help students prepare for an uncertain future? Who would like to start?
I'll just give one.
Great man.
Many kids have called bullshit on school. They just have. They've just called BS on it. Like, why am I here? A lot of my students have, anyways.
Yeah.
And so that intrinsic motivation is gone, and the extrinsic motivation, maybe from a mom or dad or family member, just doesn't exist.
Thank you. Anybody else on that one?
The needs of diverse learners within a classroom, and the professional development and mindset that needs to occur within a school in order to meet those needs.
AI in all the good ways and all the bad ways, because you really don't know if your student wrote what they submitted. And there are all sorts of tools, but it's been shown that a lot of the tools are wrong in one direction or other, false positives or false negatives. So we need to get to the point where we figure out how to use it in a way to make our world better and help our students understand how to use it in a way to get results, but not to cross that line.
Thank you. Tracy may have already answered this next lightning round question, but maybe some others want to weigh in. How will rapid expansion of and access to artificial intelligence impact teaching and learning? Anybody else like to weigh in on that? Tracy did the job there. Okay. Did you want to add something? Great.
Because for the teachers in the room, you probably have already discovered this, like AI can help you design your syllabi, right? Can help you design the next set of assignments you're going to create. The question is, how does that take away our creativity and our expertise as educators? So that's the tough part.
Could I add an addendum to the question and ask my fellow panelists if they could inform me on this, which is...
She's trying to usurp me again.
Well, just listening to the responses, I find myself wondering not so much what's the answer, but how are we going to get to the answer about AI? And what are you thinking in your different roles about the steps you're going to take in your organizations to find an answer to how do we deal with AI? Because that bewilders me as I watch now from the sidelines about what policies are going to be and what responses are going to be. But how do we decide? Are there collaborations that you have with fellow presidents, principals, upper school heads across the country? How are we answering this? Oh.
2 sentences. One of the things that I've seen over my career is sometimes when anything new, and certainly AI is big and it's profound, but oftentimes when things come in new, people quickly say, nope, I don't want to think about it, don't want to talk about it, I'm going to be the ostrich and put my head in the sand. But what I've seen over my career is, when people work together and people problem solve, as Jason said, and seek to understand, providing adequate professional development within the building. We can find the answers. AI's here. It's not going to go anywhere. But I think, and I want to just hit on something that Jason said, you had spoke to a shift in education from the teacher being the content deliverer to being more of a facilitator. And certainly, I mean, I believe that AI has an ability to enhance that within a classroom, which is also becomes a definer for classroom pedagogy, how delivery of instruction may start to look different over time.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was more than 2 sentences. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. How do we develop teachers for the future who will find the work fulfilling and stick with it for the long term? I think this question came up when we were in the waiting room there, and it's of concern to several of you. Who would like to start developing teachers for the future?
This is a real issue across the country, certainly in Winchester and Virginia. And the fact of the matter is our young people don't see teaching as a viable career. And it's not, it is, we always focus on money, and certainly we need to pay teachers more. And I've been a champion for that my whole career. But it's more than just finances, it's the job, right? The job is really challenging. And so we need to redesign the job. We need to redesign what school looks like to make it a compelling field that when folks look at it, they say, that looks like a lot of fun. That looks like something I would love to do. And unfortunately, a lot of people are looking at it like, please no, at this point.
Thank you.
I think we ought to stop trashing teachers and say they're gods. I mean, as the public discourse. I guess I made my point. I don't need my second sentence.
How many sentences? That was only one sentence, wasn't it? All right. Anybody else on that one?
What I'll say is, investing in mentorship programs, investing in quality professional development can certainly make a difference. I think I'm also a big believer in empowering the professional and elevating the role of teacher. I think to some degree with some scripted programs that exist in education, it is devaluing against the profession of teaching where people have to follow a cookbook, and it is devaluing to the professionalism. But I've found that, and I don't want to take everything that everyone, I agree with everything that everyone said, but again, I think there are certain conditions that can at least improve retention within an organization and perhaps attract people to an organization. And those are things that we need to think about. So it has to do with professional development, the work environment that people work in, how they feel valued by administrators, superintendents, college professors, presidents.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that teachers at all levels are gods and goddesses. But I think that this generation of young people, we know this, they don't believe in company loyalty. They don't even believe in career loyalty. They expect to have many different jobs and many different careers. In fact, there are a number of studies out that predict that about 40%, that for people that are in high school right now, 40% of them will work in jobs and careers 20 years from now that don't exist at this point. Right? And so we should stop trying to tell them that teaching is a great career for a lifetime. And help them start thinking about now. Plant the seeds. What is it you want to do? And when are you going to be a teacher in your life? When can you go back and be a career switcher? And so maybe you've done something else for 10 years and then you go into teaching. Or maybe you'll be a teacher for 10 years and then you'll go into something else. Instead of making them believe they have to stick with it forever. And then also, how can our schools partner with our communities to do what we do in colleges? We bring experts in the field in to be adjuncts, to supplement what the professors are doing. How can we do more of that in our K through 12 system? Maybe they're partnered with a teacher, an expert teacher, or maybe they're given a class all their own. And so that could help relieve some of the pressure on the teachers.
Okay. I think we have time for each panelist to make a closing comment, probably not more than 2 minutes apiece or so, or less if you just like to make a final comment. Okay, who would like to start? Okay, so just go down the line. We'll go down the line. Thank you.
I would like to thank everyone who organized this event. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you to so many people who came here this evening. It really is warming to see so many people interested in talking and hearing about education and the future of education. To Dr. Faust, what an absolute honor to have you at Powhatan and to hear you speak to our students today. And one thing that was so impressive, I'll embarrass Dr. Faust, one thing that she did so well is no matter the age of the kids, the connection and the ability to make your words relevant to them and inspiring was just amazing. To Dr. Fitzsimmons, I'm an alumni of Shenandoah. It makes me very happy to always learn about the leadership that you're bringing to Shenandoah. It's made tremendous changes over the years. To Jason, the work of a superintendent is incredibly hard work. And as we were talking at dinner tonight, you were talking about the power of optimism. And that even when we have bad days, we have to come back and we have to be optimistic. So that's kind of what I would want to leave with, is that I'm very optimistic about the future of education, and I'm very optimistic about our children that are in schools. But I'm also excited about change. I'm excited about how things can elevate in terms of the learning of our kids. And I'm also keenly interested in the responsibility of educational leaders and teachers to help make that happen. And also the partnerships that need to occur with members of the community, as Tracy brought up, and also parents within school divisions. Those partnerships are invaluable.
Thank you. Drew, Jack?
I want to join in thanks to the other panelists and also to all those who organized today, my visit to Powhatan and also this symposium. I want to say something in conclusion just about how welcome your presence here is, because it represents an investment in education, a concern about education that I think we need to make contagious. It's not that education can solve every problem, but without education, we're not going to solve any problems. And I feel as if my life, choosing to be an educator, to be at colleges, universities, be a student, and then be a faculty member, has been a wonderful choice, because I've been able to think about and work with students who are going to go think together with them and work with them. Students are going to go into every imaginable line of work and all over the globe, and to think you plant a seed and it gets taken beyond where you are. And that's an enormous privilege. It's also an enormous responsibility. But I feel that as we see these young students now who do have a belief that they can fix some of the things that they think we've broken, I don't think we're entirely responsible for breaking all of them, but I'll take responsibility for at least some, that their belief in what they must do and what they can do, we need to be the cheerleaders, we need to be the enablers of that, because education is so necessary now, more than ever before. So I would just close with that and say, please be cheerleaders for education in every possible way you can.
And the impact that you have had, it's really amazing. And so thank you for joining in the 75th celebration. And thanks to those who are on the organizing committee for the 75th, that you didn't only choose things like gallows or other things. You chose to do something deep and meaningful like this, right? Because I think that's a great way to embody we learn not for school, but for life, right? That you're doing that as parents, friends, donors, grandparents of Powhatan. And I think that's really quite special. When people ask what I believe in, outside of family, I believe in the transformative power of education. To take any person, young or old, from where they are to where they want or need to be, to help them decide where that is. And the other thing is that educational spaces, if they can be homes, safe homes, not safe in a political way, but safe as a place where their students aren't judged, so that they can think big thoughts, they can try out thoughts, they can fail, and it's okay. If we can create those kinds of educational homes that are safe in that way, it will be a better world.
Reiterate, thank you very much for having me, inviting a public school guy here, and so I appreciate that. I am a product of public and private school as a child, so I would say two things. One, as I said before, the future is bright. And I think we have to maintain that spirit of optimism when we talk with our youth, when we think about our youth. And even as I get older, I find myself saying things that my father might have said, the kids these days, and I have to check myself and then say, you're just getting old, But the second thing, and this is more really deep with me as a public educator, is public schools matter. All schools matter, but public schools matter to this society. We talked about an educated populace. And there is a little bit of a war on public schools right now. I believe that. And so just in your sphere of influence, you all have spheres of influence. Be a voice, be a champion, be a supporter of public schools, regardless of where you send your own children. Public schools matter, and they matter for all of us, that every kid gets a high-quality education. So just remember that as you leave.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. It's really been an honor to be able to have a conversation with this group. An inspiring, impressive group, I think. I'm very happy to have been a part of this. So thank you. Excellent. And thank you. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Donald. I would just like to add that there was something present in this conversation tonight that is not consistently present when we talk about education. This was an incredibly child-centered conversation up here. We spend so much time talking about the adults when we talk about teaching and learning, and what teachers think might be right. And as a teacher, I feel like we know a lot about that. And what parents think is right. And as a parent, I think I know a lot about that. But the adults spend a lot of time talking about the adults. And I was bowled over, especially with leaders. We are not folks that are in the classroom every day, and how child-centered this conversation was. So I want to thank you all for that as well, for keeping our children at the forefront of what we discuss when we think about education. A couple of thanks before we wrap up here. First, I'd like to, as a way of acknowledging this, we've made a donation in honor of our panelists to the John and Janice Wyatt Foundation. J2W is focused on leveling the playing field in education by funding research into the root causes of inequity, providing grants to community organizations, and facilitating cooperation and collaboration to effect change. And we are proud to support their mission and to make a donation in honor of each of our panelists and our moderator, with sincere thanks to everyone. In a moment, I'm going to give them an opportunity to exit. We have a reception coming up in a few minutes, but we'd like to give them a break before they join that. So we'll ask them to take their leave in a moment. Before they do, though, I would like to ask anybody in this room who is an educator, past, present, we'll leave out future for now, but I think you set out a good idea there that everybody should find a time to be an educator. Anyone in the room who is an educator, if you would rise so we can give you a round of applause. And as they leave, just a few more thanks. First of all, our sponsors for this evening. Once again, the Bank of Clark has been very generous in supporting this event, and also the accounting firm of Yount Hyde Barber. We are grateful to both organizations for supporting conversations about how to best educate the citizens and workforce of the future. Also, once again, Amy Sluss, Barbara Bissett, Sydney Canese, you all have done so much for our entire 75th anniversary celebration and have worked tirelessly, notably in putting today's events together with Dr. Faust and here tonight at the George Washington. So another round of applause, please, for those three incredible folks. I invite everyone to stay for our reception. It's going to begin in, we hope, about 10 minutes. We'll invite you to come out to the lobby here while some of our space is reconfigured for that. So please hang around with us. Our panelists will come back to say hello to folks then. I appreciate all of you coming and making time for this evening. Thank you very much.